Here we go.
What was the question you were going to ask me? I'm worried about my emotional state.
Oh, about the Panama Papers. Oh, no.
Yeah. Panama Papers?
No, not the Panama Papers. I don't know if anybody's heard about this yet. It's kind of an emotional trigger, I know, for a lot of people right now.
That's kind of why we're going
and
late.
maybe we're a little bit late
We were crying off in the
to
corner.
the stories, but did you guys know Kanye and Kim K, did you know they separated?
Yeah, and we were talking on just last week.
How are you doing with that, like, emotionally?
Well, I feel
you doing okay with that?
I don't know. Do we have to pick a side? Like, do we have to pick
Right.
who we're going to give
Right.
our allegiance to?
Right.
I mean, he did a lot of good things. He ran for president. He fought for
Right.
her to get the star on the pavement. We talked about that just last week.
Right. I know. Wait, how crazy is that? That 2 weeks in a row we've brought up Kim Kardashian. That's the most random thing in the world.
Yeah, I know very little about her at all. That's it.
Well, let's just say apparently there's something aloof either with Kim or with Kanye, man.
Maybe
or with
he had put a lot into his presidential run, so maybe he felt like he needed some more time to do that.
Oh, maybe.
Because
maybe your esposa is dropping some hot bombs on us here. Apparently, maybe they're back together already.
What?
I don't know. Times are changing, man. Faster than I can keep up with.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to Testing Normal. My name is Jordan.
Welcome back to Testing Normal, guys. Episode Buck 17. Buck
117. It's
coming in hot and heavy.
Yeah.
It's delightful. Delightful.
Oh, Amador has something to say. He says that they are kind of back together, but not really. It's like the perfect ghetto relationship, but for rich people.
Perfect. Well, I guess when you have 3 kids involved, or 4 kids, however many they have involved in it, they kind of have to be in each other's lives.
This is how much I know about them.
I think so.
None.
I think anytime, even if you're divorced, if you have kids together and you are a part of your kids' lives, then no matter what, in some way you're going to be involved with that other person.
I'll be super honest.
To some extent.
I don't know, like, if I passed either one of them on the street, that I would know who they are. I would be the safest person probably for them to come in contact with if they wanted to feel normal in public.
If it was a normal day and they weren't wearing masks, I probably wouldn't recognize Kim, but I would probably almost for sure recognize Kanye. I would think. I would imagine. Just because he has a very distinct face. Very distinct.
I know I've seen him a few times. Like, I've watched his Rogan interview and stuff like that, but I just don't know. I don't know. Celebrities, I'm not, if I don't know them that well or follow them, I wouldn't probably pick them out of a crowd. I'd probably pick out a lot more lower hanging fruit than most people, but in weird categories.
Well, he's pretty popular, all of his clothing lines and everything like that. And his rap and all this
I know
stuff.
his name. So, I mean, if I yelled Kanye in a crowd and he said, hey, I wouldn't, I'd believe him.
Speaking of clothing lines, though, something kind of interesting that I learned about this week. And it's not really specifically clothing lines, but it's like shops and, India, basically.
Yeah. That's cool.
In India, this is kind of crazy. I didn't know this, but there were essentially not laws, but there was no laws protecting workers from having the right to sit down when they're at work.
Really?
So it was an expectation for 10 to 12-hour shifts. They would get one 20-minute lunch, but between, other than that period of time, they were required to stand. So like people's feet were getting swollen. They're varicose
what kind of
veins.
Job, though? Like any job?
So like if you worked in a shop, if you worked in like a retail shop, if you worked in like a grocery store, if you worked in anywhere like that, like you're not allowed to sit down.
It's like here we just give people stools. We're like, oh, you want to work? Does this stool work for you? Like,
I know, it makes you really appreciate what we have, right?
Yeah.
Like in that respect,
I think that is one thing people don't realize. We do have like some pretty good labor laws. I mean, there's some that are obviously ridiculous, and every law, you get too many rules and you go too far. But we do have quite a few like rules protecting workers.
Yeah.
Especially coming out of like when people used to all be self-employed, and then we went through the Industrial Revolution and everything, and then when unions did something good for people. we had
Yeah.
those. So
Yeah, and so I was reading about this. So right now, it's currently in a situation where they're about to pass laws in certain regions, um, but they're saying that it's still not required by law to allow a employee to sit down. And most of their shifts are between 12 to 14 hours. They said.
it's a
So
long
it's just like,
shift.
oh, that's a rough one, man.
Yeah.
That's a rough one. And they're probably, let's be real, like their wages probably aren't, significant
Well,
at
we don't know. Like, there's parts of India
that
that
region.
are like they're huge. Like,
I
they're
would wager
big
the
and
majority of them
I would
are
imagine
below
the jobs that we're talking
standard
about
of
are
living
not
in the
they're
U.S.
not high paying jobs. No, I would agree with you there. They're probably not in that caliber. Speaking of
Yeah,
India,
that'd be rough.
I don't know a lot about this. Maybe you do, but apparently China kind of like made a pass at their border and like had some troops get in there, and then they stopped them. Like all I saw was like an alert on this, and people are like, China's trying to invade India, and I don't know anything more except that some of the comments were saying, this is like a Twitter feed. It was like they were saying like, oh, this happens all the time. I'm like, well, whoa, hold the train. Like that's not normal. Like what's going on there? And I just, not to bring up China
Yeah, it
every
is
single
interesting.
time, but it's like, what is going on?
I have seen in the past, like I do recall seeing historical cases where the Chinese army would infringe upon the Indian territory.
Okay.
And what's interesting about it is their China, it seems like, is like in this constant state of expansion, right? Like at least that's what it appears as. Like they're always trying to expand and take territory in the South China Sea. Obviously, right now they're like majorly encroaching upon Taiwan. Obviously, the
Right.
flyovers, military flyovers. They're building islands. They're doing a lot of stuff. But something that people don't talk about a lot is China kind of pushing on territories into surrounding, more Western countries.
Yeah, Western countries. Someone made an interesting comment on it that it's an interesting thought to think about. And before I say that, my brother said, "What's up, guys?" in a comment on YouTube. So, guys, just so you know,
What's
we're over
up,
on YouTube too.
Josh?
I looked over. I'm like, hey, we don't ever get
Josh.
comments on there. Is when countries expand, if you think through history, they haven't, like when they expand via war, I guess, and like invading borders and everything, because they expand, you tend to weaken. I mean, most of us have probably played the game Risk, right? And the part of the risk is not just going to war, it's also in spreading out your power. You become weaker in other areas. And someone brought up the point, it's like, this could be like good and bad as far as China goes, because as they try to expand, they also weaken themselves because they're not strengthening themselves. And we all know that they're like kind of imploding, ready to fall apart economically as well, with the whole Evergrande bank thing and stuff going on in their own country. But to expand and try to take on new territories would be a stress on them even further.
Right. Unless they're getting natural resources, unless they're getting some type of resources
true.
that provides a economical boost, right? And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit in Africa, right? They're kind of developing a lot, and they're kind of starting to create a lot of deals in regions where they have higher resources.
Right.
Even currently in Afghanistan, we've seen the Chinese government start to make deals with the Taliban territory, leaders. And they're coming, man. They're coming and they're taking in a lot of territory.
Right. My brother said, as I was saying that, it's like the game of Risk. I swear I didn't look at your comment before I said that.
That is true.
But it is like that.
That's a good point.
It's like, oh no, now I only have like 3 troops against this, and now how am I going to protect these borders and everything? It's yeah,
a little squirrely.
it's
squirrely.
It's still getting squirrely out there.
Well, what else is squirrely though right now? And this is something
Please
that's
be a story about squirrels.
Oh my God, no. But I have had several situations where squirrels have attacked people.
Oh.
And there was a squirrel that was frequently attacking people that I was having to treat them for, and for some reason it was literally like coming up to people. They thought, oh, it's such a nice squirrel. It was in Bush Park.
Yeah, no,
They're
that's
like,
where
oh,
the
it's such a
owls
nice
attack
squirrel.
people too. That whole park
Yeah.
is just trying to get people out.
Owls attacking people
Yep.
frequently. But the squirrel would literally come up to them, act super sweet. They would go, they could think, oh, this squirrel likes people. And then the squirrel would go like melee on them.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it was coming up to them. It's an aggressive squirrel. Look out.
That's funny.
Look out. But no, something that is squirrely. But it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on something that I don't know if anybody out there has been watching the news. Comment if you have. About these, they're called the Pandora Papers, and it's a massive file leak, essentially. It's like 12 million files from 14 different firms around the world of information that was leaked. And it was basically all dealing with elite, super wealthy individuals and reality stars and musicians that have most of their, or have large investments in offshore locations, and in like investments, like basically shell companies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty revealing, showing like the degree of wealth, like even certain presidents in particular. Like obviously, we know that Vladimir Putin has a ton of money in all these different crazy places, right?
Right.
But it was other things like the UK Prime Minister, the former Tony Blair, was showing all of his offshore investments. The King of Jordan was showing all of his investments, like offshore.
So like stuff they're kind of trying
even
to
like
tax
the singers,
shelter?
like who was it? Shakira, yeah, as a tax shelter, like Shakira. Like all these people that have like hundreds of millions of dollars, like invested in these kind of like basically evading taxation from mostly their country or the U.S. government. And even though some of it is legal to do that, it kind of goes to show if you have resources in that way, you know, the rich get richer by having the capacity to avoid that type of taxation, right?
Well, maybe not to avoid, but just to have it not pinned on them. And there's ways to do that because of the way that we've done things. And we've seen this last year with like hedge funds and with these, like they call them stonks, where the quote unquote dumb money has gone and like bought up AMC and GME and all that. And there's all this trading going on behind the scenes. Now Robinhood's been blamed of trading, like when you sell your stock, Robinhood actually is buying it but marking it up because they know the stock is going up and selling it for more, so they're making more as a money maker, as a market maker. But they're working with Citadel to do it. There was a huge thing on Twitter where Citadel hadn't tweeted for months, like since January of last year, and January of this year, and they started going on this tirade against all these people saying it was fake and all that, and there was proof of it. Like they had the messages to prove it. So it's not just there; it's all these places, and they've been used to the way that money is done, and it can be hidden. But as we know, nothing in today's day and age is hidden at all.
Right.
I want to go more into that money of that because I think that we want to have a discussion on that. But to that same degree, this week Twitch got hacked, and they released like tons and tons of streamers' information and how much money they're making and the deals that they're getting, the donations they're getting, and that got out there. They went through and reset every single person's stream key, which like how we're broadcasting tonight is through a stream key. We have a private key that goes to a server and it's ours. Because those were all leaked, they had to reset the entire system for all of Twitch, and people that know gaming know that that's where games get streamed. Like that's where online streaming really had its birth, was through game streaming. People want to watch other people play games, which is strange, but
what's crazy, cool. It's crazy how it seems there's a bit of a appeal to me of the good old days in respect of being able to have level of privacy when it comes to finances, because you had currency, hard currency, that you could easily store in your home, or you could store in a bank, but there was less requirements for reporting to a degree of that earnings. And now everything turning into a digital format, like majority of us, I would say it's pretty safe to say, keep the majority of their money in some type of bank and or even online bank. And so most of your currency is in ones and zeros, right? And
it's like 70% of the US dollar is not in like hard currency.
Right.
Shout out to Nate and now on YouTube, by the way, who just commented. I think I know who that is, but We'll say hi to you.
What's up, Nate D? Um, but what's crazy is this in this new bill that's been pushed, right? I think is it within the infrastructure bill? There is a push.
I think this one is. It
by,
might be through a different bill as well.
It might be a different
but
plan.
It's being pushed in
but anyways,
multiple
there's
fronts.
A push through the Biden organization to basically give the IRS more power to track your transactions and your wealth. And so basically right now they're pushing for every transaction that's $600 or greater to be monitored and sent to the IRS as a triggering transaction. So they're just essentially, because right now I believe it's $10,000. Every transaction that's $10,000 or greater has to be sent and reported to the IRS.
Right.
But bringing that down to 6,000 essentially gives the IRS a much more detailed accounting of individual citizens and their wealth and or income. So that makes me a little nervous, only in respect of the article was talking about how the pros, the advantage is that they suspect the U.S. IRS is missing about 125. I think they said $125 billion approximately every year in taxation.
Right.
And by increasing the monitoring within bank transactions, they think they'll be able to catch that. And they're saying that all that will do essentially is facilitate more funding and staffing to increase the number of audits they do every year.
For the IRS, right. Well, I sent you a tweet earlier this week, if you remember, that someone was complaining about Elon Musk's wealth had surpassed $200 billion this week. And they said, to put this into perspective, it would take the median U.S. worker 4,815,216 years to make that much. And someone pointed out another perspective is that the federal government would spend his entire fortune in about 2 weeks. So when we're talking about 125 billion, this is 200 billion they're saying that would be gone in about 2 weeks.
Crazy.
Why are we trying to scrimp? I mean, I get it. Like, I think that taxes are inevitable. Like, to a degree, some taxes have to be there. We can't get rid of them. That's what we do. That's the kind of what we pay to be in a free society. I think that they needed. I wouldn't argue against a giant overhaul and making it it better.
Or a new way of taxation.
Or different, more simple way of taxing. But this
Amen.
is them trying to gain more control. And I think that this kind of leads into them wanting to digitize things and control even more. If they can gain this control now, I think that there's more things on the front that are coming to control even further.
Am I missing something? Am I missing something here? And anybody out there, tell me if I am, because it's very possible. But I'm sure I've advocated for this before, but why can't we just have a flat tax? Well, in doing so, I know it's oversimplifying to a degree, but if we have a type of a flat tax, and maybe it's a flat tax based on what type of good it is, like, food is, 1% tax, whereas automobiles are a 3% tax or whatever, you would essentially eliminate the need for the IRS, or at least 90% of the IRS, saving the U.S. obviously billions, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars every year.
Yeah.
There's a huge way of saving money.
I think what has to come along at the same time is looking at, this infrastructure bill is, they say it would cost $3.5 trillion, which is a ton of money. When they added $4 trillion, to put that into perspective, it's like $70,000 for every human being in the United States. It's putting that much debt on them. And they were touting that this would cost $0. Now, what they meant was, because I think that headlines kind of went crazy with that, it's still just as asinine what they meant, but what they actually meant was it's not going to add to the deficit. Now, that's kind of like if you said you had $50,000 in debt and someone gave you $25,000 and you didn't put it towards the debt, you bought some more stuff. It doesn't necessarily go towards your debt, but it doesn't go towards paying down your debt either. And so why do we keep raising the debt ceiling and keep raising how much we spend on things instead of looking at why are we spending so much money? Now, everyone always goes to, well, we spend a ton of money on military. I think that we don't spend enough on that. I think we could spend more to make ourselves safer because that's what the government's supposed to do. But we spend a ton of money on things we don't need to.
I think the way we spend money on the military could certainly be much more efficient. I think
I
we
think so
waste
too, but only
a
because of the
lot
ways
on
that
that.
it's bloated in most governments. So
Mhm.
I would agree, but I think we could spend more and have a better military and spend it wiser and have an infinitely better protection for who we are, because we see the world's a crazy place. We say that like every week. Like if China decides to do something crazy, I'd really like to have like a top-notch military. Like I would hope that my tax dollars went to help protect us from that if that comes. So I don't want to downplay that. But there's tons
Well,
of better ways that we could spend our money and be more efficient. Like,
yeah.
you know, we canceled
And
this
it's not
pipeline and people maybe want electric cars, but in the meantime, we should get our oil here instead of trucking it across or boating it across the ocean and take it
Mhm.
directly to where we need it.
We're
Why don't
sucking up the resources of other countries first.
right.
Um, Something that maybe I don't just have a healthy grasp on the concept, but every year, it seems like it's been every year, we talk about the need to raise the debt ceiling.
Yep.
And at this point, I'm going to be honest with you, it sure feels like a joke.
It
Like,
is.
in the respect of like, well, what's the point of having the debt ceiling if we're always going to raise it? Like, so there's no ceiling essentially. Like, it's
Right.
just the debt is going to
Well,
continue.
they have to go through Congress in order to raise it. And so they've had the numbers to do that for the people like to spend. And I'm not just talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about Republicans that aren't actually being, you know, conservative in any way, shape, or form. They're all on one team and they don't care because they've got what they need. And they've all been there for a long time. And I think it's time for I don't think it's actually new ideas we need. I think we need to go back to some of our foundational ideas where they're more simplified. Like we've made it way too complicated. And I think because of the complications, we make it way too easy for things like fraud to take place and bloat to take place. Because in this infrastructure bill, really what it's supposed to do is fix our infrastructure. I mean, it's in the name, right? So why wouldn't you want better roads, better electricity, better all these things? Yeah, of course. I mean, and you do have to invest in those things. I get it. If that's what it was for, that's fine. But currently we're seeing that it's like, I don't know, it's not even a fourth of what they're saying they want to spend actually goes towards that. It goes towards a lot of other types of like political things that help them continue their extremist things. It was like, no, every penny of this should go towards infrastructure. And hidden in there is this thing with 8 cents a gallon for driving. Like, now part of this is because you got electric cars that are not paying gas tax, which I totally get. Like there has to be a way to fix that. But when they're taking up a Netflix idea of a subscription plan that you have to now report and make taxes even more complicated, I think we're just continuing into the wrong direction of doing that. And then you're like hurting the people that can't afford to go to electric cars first. So you're not like I'm not going to drop the race card on that, but definitely like there's a class thing going on there where if someone can't afford or doesn't want to yet afford a new car, then they're going to be. I mean, if you drive, 12,000 miles a year, do the math. Can you afford that tax? Because that's going to be a lot.
Right.
Or truckers.
It was
imagine that.
It was 0.6. What was it? 0.6
was 8 cents a mile.
8 cents a mile. Jeez. Yeah. That's a difficult one. I think also that just goes back to my recommendation of a flat tax. I mean, I think that you eliminate a lot of these issues and you prevent the potential disparities from. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think you prevent a lot of the disparities that would specifically impact lower Social Security.
And I mean, and this seems like a novel idea, but why not operate within a budget? I mean, that seems like a novel idea too, right? Is bring your spending down.
Well, that's what the national debt limit's supposed to be, right?
It's supposed to be, but how about this?
Federal budget.
Bring it down. How about set instead of a national debt? How about lowering the debt limit so you have to pay it down before you add anything else? before you can add
Yeah.
any other expenses.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea because, but here's the thing, the nation has to recognize it's going to make somebody mad, right? It's going to negatively affect some group. And if maybe that's the military,
But hey,
maybe it would negatively
it's
affect
negatively affecting groups
someone.
now by doing what we're doing. So
Now, if they had the capacity to make it an even negative distribution, that might be best, right? Like
well,
every organization takes a 1% cut.
I think there's a
or
ton of
something.
things that we fund that could just nearly immediately go away, because the only things that the government is there for by the Constitution is to preserve rights of the people and to protect the safety of the people. So that's military, and then making sure that people's rights are not infringed upon. If you can cut anything outside of those two things.
There's a lot of potential cuts.
Yeah.
A lot of potential. Yeah, so that's a pretty wild one. That's a pretty wild situation going on there. No doubt about that.
Ooh, I have an idea.
Something.
What about
that,
if they add to the debt? That's how much percentage every single congressman gets percentage of cut in their pay. So they say they add they add 10% to the debt.
Well, then that would disincentivize the congressman to push for debt cuts.
No. I'm saying if they add to the debt and it goes up 10%, their pay goes down by 10%.
There's an inverse correlation. That's beautiful. Love it. 100% for that.
I'm sure all of our ideas are terrible, but they're ideas.
But maybe not.
Maybe not. YouTube's like, shut them down.
On the lines of cars, that was kind of fascinating to me, is there's now a early stage development that's going to be happening right now with your driver's license, and actually having them to be able to be seen on your phone rather than actually have to have a card, which I actually think, I have no problem with this personally, as far as the having another resource for showing your driver's license. But it's interesting, like some of the states, there's already 20 states actually that are in the early stages of developing a digital version of a driver's license right now. So like some of those are Connecticut, Georgia, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Oklahoma, Utah. It's actually interesting. More conservative states are implementing this right now. But it's kind of signaling that support of saying, hey, we want to bring more things into the digital world, since we're already, majority of the population has a phone or a smartphone, majority of the population. Now, if it gets to the point where they say you have to have it on a smartphone no matter what, well, then you have to provide a person with a smartphone, which could be tricky, I guess.
Yeah, there's ramps and rails on the internet. There's reasons. So I used to be like very, very pro these types of things, and I'm not saying I'm negative these things. I'm negative them done in a bad way. So you and I were kind of having a conversation prior to this where I thought this too. Like people, you would think that people who are in the cryptocurrency world would love a digital dollar, would love a central, blockchain dollar for the United States or for another country or whatever. Predominantly, most of them are against it for a few reasons. The number one reason is control, because it's not decentralized. And what that means is if you are in control of it, it depends. If a good person's in control of it, then hey, maybe everything's hunky-dory, right? But as soon as somebody's in there that says, you know what, we're going to institute China's social credit system, and it's going to be tied to your digital wallet. And when you show that, we know when you open it because it's our app. We know when you show it, and we can disable it at any moment so that you can do or not do whatever we want.
So could you make a real quick clarification and distinction between what a digital currency would look like and what our current digital currency usage through?
Yeah, so our current digital currency for sure can be tracked for the most part. Although the $600 thing, they don't usually report anything that's under 10,000, except for now they're trying to bring that down, which I think is kind of a step towards what I'm talking about, which is, I can also pull out money, or I can get paid in cash and it never touches my account, right? And so, though you're supposed to pay taxes on that and everything, and I'm not advocating that you don't, I'm just saying that is an avenue that someone can use. So they don't have to use digital. They can use a hard-coded cash. Now, if we go all digital and say we step towards getting an all digital passport, identity, vaccine card, whatever you want to call it, like any one of those categories, if it's a centralized something and some one entity has control of it, then you don't actually own your own information anymore. And so you have to really trust that system. So right now we trust the banks, right? For the most part. But we know that it's all because we just trust that the dollar's there and that it works. It's not really backed by anything anymore. It really hasn't been for a long time. It's just a confidence in that system, right? Same with crypto. I mean, it's confidence in the system. But with a centralized digital dollar that was on a blockchain that was controlled by, say, the US, they could then dictate how that's spent, because you can't get a hard-coded dollar anymore. So they could say, no, it can't be used for, this type of drug because we don't approve it. Yet it's something that would be over the counter or something. Like they could say, well, our dollar can't be used for that. Oh, your store violated what we said. Fine. You can no longer accept our currency. Your account is shut down. Oh, you don't want to follow our rules? We're going to just strip your account of all of the money because they have control over it, because it's centralized,
Right.
which they can do now through banks. But when they can track every single transaction, who it's made from, and then every token is now encoded so that if I gave you something, they could see that you gave someone else something, that gave someone else something, that gave someone else something. They can track every little hop that
It's
it
more
makes.
control.
And so while I'm for a digital currency, what I'm not for is a centralized digital currency that can be turned off and on when they want to, and that they can add to. So what I would love to see is a currency that decouples from the government, where they can't add to it. So they are held to a debt ceiling. So they are held to a finite amount of money that's in the system based on the general consensus instead of on what they think is best for them. And so
Yeah.
that it kind of stretches out to, like, if all of a sudden your identity is tracked every time someone scans it,
Right.
they now know where you went. They know who you were with. They're if we're talking about, we're fearful of what Facebook knows, they want that information, and they can
Which
get
makes
it.
me a little bit nervous in the respect of the way we have such a growth and development in cryptocurrency. That is, to be honest, a step towards facilitating the monitoring of any and all transactions. Maybe not the degree of
Right.
control, but definitely the monitoring of all
The
transactions.
monitoring, though, I actually am not necessarily against, because I actually control those and they can't take them. So there's a difference. They can see my money in the bank and they kind of quasi could have control. But if I have it, say, in Bitcoin or something else, I just use Bitcoin because everyone knows what that is or has heard the name. They can't get that out of my account. They can't force me to. They can't stop me from using it. I mean, this is what they're facing now with the El Salvador thing, and soon to be probably Brazil, which would be huge, is that they can't, is now money can cross borders and they could see it. I'm fine with reporting that. Like, I think that we should. I think that I still would say we need some reform and some direction and everything. Even if they're bad rules, we need some rules. But it can cross borders, and it knows no bounds, and they can't control it. It's not theirs.
Right.
It's mine. And even
unless the country creates a cryptocurrency, which would be synonymous with their own.
But then
centralized
I think
currency,
what their fear
essentially.
is, and this is where you see, I mean, I'm sure even if people don't know about cryptocurrency, that they see that China has banned Bitcoin for the 27,000th time. They do it like every other
Right.
week. They ban it. And the reason why is because they're afraid that people will use someone else's instead of theirs before it comes out, because they are going to launch one. There is a digital yuan that's going to be launched, and they want people to be tied to their currency, because currently right now there are parts of the country where if you don't own a home there, you can't ride the buses. And there are certain amenities that you can't get to because you can't prove you have home ownership. You have social credit scores, and all these things that we're talking about, if they're controlled centrally, have all of that ability that can just have a switch flipped at any moment. and you need to trust who controls that. And if it's not a group consensus or a decentralized system, it's dangerous if it's in the wrong hands. And we know because we have the evidence of other countries doing it.
If we call it a decentralized system, though, is it truly decentralized if there is a company that is the central organizer and facilitator for that currency?
In what way? Like, give an example.
Let's say, specifically Ethereum, like the original platform for Ethereum that hosts and manages
they designed it, built it, and released it. It's now decentralized and becoming more decentralized as it spreads, because it's more and more people come online, and they can't override that.
Okay.
So every decentralized system starts out centralized because somebody has to be a creator. There has to be a team, a mind behind it. But then they write it in such a way that when it propagates and goes out, this is what Bitcoin did. It was originally centralized, and when it goes out and people begin to join the network, it gets released to everybody slowly, and slowly becomes decentralized. The problem is that, and why it's good, I think, that China banned Bitcoins, and specifically, is because they realized the worth and the value of it, and they were like a high percentage of the people that were on that network controlling it. Now that they banned it, they're almost none. So that's good, because it started to become more centralized in a sense, and now has, through those bannings where they're trying to hurt it, it's actually made it stronger by further decentralizing it again.
It's fascinating.
And so I think that I say all that not to be nerdy, not to be boring, not all that is that we need to think about these things when we think about digital identities, when we think about digital health records. Who's controlling that? It needs to be a system that's decentralized. I'm not against digitizing those things, but it needs to be something where we are the ones in control and not them, because that's why we've gotten to where we're at. The reason why Facebook has gotten to where they are and become the conglomerate that they are is because they own our data and we do not. So what do we do to reverse those roles so that we own our data and that they do not?
Yeah, it's a wild time, and I think we're in a precipice of change. And when it comes to the point of a worldwide change, especially with currency, that's a crazy time, man. It's a crazy time to be alive.
It is wild.
We'll see what happens with that, though. Hopefully it ends up being for the freedom and the lack of control, or less control by centralized organizations.
I do think CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, they will happen. They're going to. There's no way we can get away from it. But how we adopt them, how we address them as people, especially in a country where, we're said to have freedoms, we need to be careful as we approach them and what we do and don't voice that we accept, and be careful how we jump into them. So agreed.
All right, guys. That's most of the big stuff I wanted to drop on y'all this week.
Digital week.
I think if you're good, Jordan, I'm good.
I'm good.
You ready to do some tills?
Yep.
All right. Okay, I'll go first. Today I learned, and this is something everybody out there probably was wanting to learn and needed to learn. Today I learned the ancient Egyptians developed the first recorded early pregnancy test, whereby a woman would urinate on a bag of wheat or barley, if you choose, and if the bag started sprouting, it indicated pregnancy.
What?
In 1963, researchers actually tested this and found it to be approximately 70% accurate.
That's amazing. How did they? Okay, so whenever things like this
who was
happen,
the first person to test
I
that?
think who tested this? Like who convinced enough women to get that kind of accuracy? You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, it's more fascinating to me who in the Egyptian times thought, "Hey, that pregnant lady peed on barley. Hey, that non-pregnant lady peed on barley, and the one that was pregnant, it sprouted."
How many women were peeing on barley?
And also, it takes a month for it to sprout. So who was looking at that
Okay,
that
so here's another
that piece of
question then.
barley?
I guess I figured out it was 70% accurate, but back then, how would you know? Like, how would you know that it was that? Like, 'cause if it takes that long?
I don't know. And it doesn't say a month, but I just assumed like I would imagine it would take about a month for something to sprout,
No,
right?
it would
Or
take a
or
few
a couple
days.
weeks. Only a few days?
If it
Oh,
was, if
okay.
those conditions were right, seeds sprout pretty quick.
Oh well, I am not a botanist, so that being said, I have no idea.
Yeah,
So that's
I
fascinating.
don't
That
know
it can go
much
that
about
quick.
robots either. Okay. Today I learned about the Finnish day fine system. Most infractions are fined based on what you could spend in a day based on your income. The more severe the infraction, the more day fines you have to pay, which can cause millionaires to receive speeding tickets of $100,000.
Whoa. I love that.
You'd love it until
That's
you were a
fascinating.
millionaire and got a speeding ticket.
Yeah, but then that would be feel the same way as if it feels to someone that makes 30,000 a year and they get a speeding ticket, right?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel
That would
about it.
have the same
It's fascinating.
fiscal.
I don't know how I feel about it.
It's fascinating. Huh. Interesting.
I will
All
say
right.
the most fascinating speeding ticket thing I ever saw was a town that did an experiment where they rewarded you for going the speed limit versus fining you for speeding. So it's like not as many people did they actually fine for speeding, but the ones that they did paid like a lottery system, and if you went the speed limit, they would send you a reward. And they actually had a
Ooh,
better turnout. Like they
that's
had a
fascinating.
better like safety rating and everything else than just
Well, it's kind of
fining
like
people.
insurance companies that
Right.
reward you for better driving, right?
Right. So people knew
Yeah.
that there was an incentive. I'm like, oh, see, here's the thing. Why not go that route? Like I get the whole fine him more, make him feel bad, all that kind of stuff. But if there
Well,
was
that goes
an
against the same thing, war on drugs, man. That goes a lot of the prison systems actually are the same problem. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, it's astronomically weirder. But yes, agreed.
It's crazy. All right, my two more TILs. If the Andromeda galaxy were bright enough to be fully visible to the naked eye, if you were looking up in the sky, it would be 6 times as wide as our moon. So if you were looking up at the sky
Mm-hmm.
and you were looking at the Andromeda galaxy,
Whoa.
and if it was just super bright, the entire galaxy,
Would
it would
be
be 6 times the size, 6 times as wide as our moon from where our current location is.
that means it's massive.
That's how huge it is. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because most galaxies are just a blip.
Right. It's incredible.
Whoa.
And it also shows the degree of proximity.
True.
Also, on that same note, everybody out there, every year, just so you guys know, because you probably were curious about this, every year the moon moves 3.82 centimeters away from the Earth. A little bit farther. Now, that statistic would be much more frightening if you knew every year the moon moved 3.8 centimeters closer to the Earth, right?
I was gonna say, if you said closer, I'm like, whoa. But then, okay, so like that's not very far, but like if we go back
Every
on
year,
data,
though,
say it's
that's
been
pretty
say
quick.
2,000 years, how far has it moved?
Yeah.
Is that enough to have changed like climates, tides, all that kind of stuff?
Let me tell you.
Because that would
Let's see.
raise the
Let's say
waters.
if you go back 1,000 years, right? That would be what? Basically 3 centimeters to an inch. So that's 1,000 inches, right? In 1,000 years. So that's 83 feet in 1,000 years.
Not a lot.
So yeah, not too much, not too bad. Okay, my last TIL. The human egg is called an ovum, right?
Sure.
And it's approximately 100 microns or micrometers in diameter, right? So what's cool about this, not a lot of people know that the human egg actually is visible by the naked eye.
Whoa.
And it's about the size of a period at the end of a sentence, the average like dot of a period.
And that's also how you get rid of them.
And that's also kind of crazy though. It's just a tiny, tiny little dot, but usually you can see it with the naked eye. Kind of cool.
That is weird. That's very tiny.
All right, shower thoughts. Shower thoughts. Shower thoughts. Hit Hit me. You got more than me.
There were probably vegetarians and vegans in the Matrix who refused to eat meat for ethical reasons, when in reality, their efforts were for nothing because the animals weren't even real.
Whoa, it's a mind twist. That's a mind twist. Also, shout out to my good friend and frequent companion who I hang out with all the time, Keanu Reeves. He has a Matrix movie, Matrix 4, coming out, I believe, in December, as well as a John Wick.
On the same day? It was going to be on the same weekend originally, before the world got scared of the shadow.
Dude, we totally need to go see both of those on the same weekend.
They were supposed to come out the same week before all this.
God, it's delightful. God bless Keanu Reeves. Okay.
He's like the Nicolas Cage of today.
But not as socially hated.
Right. But he's like the amount of and weird movies he's been in. Like,
yeah,
except I think he's a little bit wiser of a guy.
And more successful, I would say.
Yeah. Although Nicolas Cage was successful for a while.
True.
Then not so much.
Dryer lint is the average color of all of your clothes combined.
Is it all of? I mean, how often? You're supposed to swap it more than that. Maybe it's the average of the last few loads.
Yeah, perhaps.
Otherwise, guys, let's not have a fire, okay? I've almost had that happen.
A little dangerous.
Please.
But basically the average color of most people's clothes is like a grayish blue.
Unless you're goth.
Unless for some reason the only thing that comes off of your clothing is blue jeans.
Or you're goth.
I've never seen black lint. Have you?
True. I wonder if black clothes give off black lint. What do you guys think out there? That's an important thing to know.
Amador made a good point though about we forgot to mention it, is that he does believe the Egyptians were crazy smart. I do agree with you, Amador. As well.
They were also did some
hashtag pyramids
things.
Hashtag pyramids.
Yeah.
All right, hit me.
Oh, I was like not getting some of these messages. He said he always wanted to fight Kanye and break his jaw again.
Good man, Amador.
Sad I missed that. The real reward of cigarettes is removing yourself from a given situation.
Ooh, that's fascinating. Yeah, you could say the same thing for other like cigars or vapes and whatever.
Anything
yeah,
really.
That's a good point.
Like
Amador does believe his lint. Amador does believe his lint is black. I'm gonna need some evidence of this because I don't think I've ever seen actual black lint.
Pictures.
And I'm not sure. And I'm not talking about belly button lint. I'm not talking about belly button lint here, guys. Okay, short thought. When an orphan takes a selfie, it's actually a family photo.
That's so bad.
I love that short thought.
I shouldn't laugh at that.
It's amazing. You should enjoy it. Also, everybody out there should go watch the new Dave Chappelle
I need to watch that
series that just came out. It's hilarious.
Everyone's trying to cancel him.
And not politically correct at all, but it's hilarious.
We will eventually have to recycle and reuse cemeteries.
Yeah.
I think so. I read this and I was like, yes, but also many times we accidentally have. So like we've already run into that problem. Like,
Also, cemeteries should be vertical instead of horizontal. That's just my opinion.
So, okay, so get this. You guys should go find this podcast, Lore. Like, I don't know if it's still going on, but they did one on cemeteries. And that used to be like you paid a ton of money to be close to the church. Well, they ran out of space next to there and started like piling up dirt. And then they had floods and it caused the bodies to like wash out and like run into the streets from like some of the major churches around. Like,
whoa.
Can you imagine? You're like, not so great of land now to die in.
Yeah, that's not the best case scenario.
No. Okay.
Dang.
Do you have any more?
No.
Okay, I have one more. Oh, it's about driving. Yeah. We just talked about that. Driving safely and not speeding actually makes you feel like a rebel among the majority of drivers.
And also the majority of people want to kill you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I don't know what's more dangerous. It's actually like speeding and risking a
Actually,
ticket, or the other drivers getting so mad at you.
I don't mind it if you're in the slow lane. If you're in the fast lane
Even
though,
then,
and you're
if there's
going
people
not
that,
even the speed
you
limit.
know, there's some people that just want to go like fast, and the fast lane
Yeah.
is not fast enough because you're going too slow in the slow lane. It's not really the slow lane, it's the lane that you're
Yeah.
not passing
Or
in.
if you're going in a single lane road and you aren't going the speed limit, you shouldn't be on the road. Simple as that.
It's true. Yeah.
Very frustrating.
Yeah. What is it in like it's really well enforced in other states and even other countries that if you're not passing someone, you're not in the left lane. Like, but now you get
Right.
people like on I-5 and trucks and all that. They're just like, here's the middle lane. I'm going to sit here. And they sit there so
The
much that
worst.
there's ruts in the road because so many people just drive in the middle lane.
It's the worst. The worst. The worst.
Amador says, Ludacris has a song that describes my feelings about slow drivers. I'll let you look it up.
Boo, boo. Classic.
Oh,
All right,
good
guys. Well,
times.
thank you so much for logging in and listening and sharing life with us this week. We appreciate y'all.
It's been
And
great.
subscribe on Facebook and YouTube. There's a little bell button so that way you can get a notification when we log on. So that way you can make comments and give us your thoughts about these crazy topics.
They
So
both
make
have
sure you
a
do that.
weird bell button, but YouTube's is more worky. Like Facebook
Make sure you all do
likes
that.
money, but like YouTube, if you put that bell and say notify me, it will do it. So
Yes, that'd be
times.
awesome. We appreciate you guys. Hope you have a fantastic week, and we will talk to you next week. Peace
See
out.
ya.